Good morning, evening, or night. Wherever you are, welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Thursday, 22nd May 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. United States. Economic uncertainty tied to U.S. trade policy is causing market fluctuations. Wall Street initially slumped as Treasury yields rose due to U.S. government debt concerns. However, markets rebounded, with the S&P 500, Dow Jones Industrial Average, and Nasdaq Composite all rising following assessments of the Trump tax bill. KLSA warned that U.S. stock investors may underestimate the impact of the trade war on corporate earnings. The number of Americans filing for jobless aid has decreased slightly. The EU is developing a new trade proposal aimed at reaching a deal with the U.S. Turning to Russia, the ongoing conflict with Ukraine is creating economic and military strain, potentially pushing it towards peace negotiations. Putin announced the creation of a buffer zone along the Ukrainian border. The Kremlin said no new direct peace talks are scheduled between Russia and Ukraine. Russia dismissed Trump's suggestion for the Pope to mediate talks with Ukraine. Russia's war economy is reportedly struggling. Funding for Russian aircraft production is being cut due to manufacturing delays. Russian lawmakers are advocating for the right to disregard Western company buyback options. Ukrainian drone strikes have repeatedly targeted Moscow, causing airport closures and air traffic disruptions. Russia's defense ministry reported downing 105 Ukrainian drones, with 35 over the Moscow region. Russia claims to have downed hundreds of Ukrainian drones in total. Putin visited Russia's Kursk region. In response to the conflict, the EU has approved tariffs on Russian fertilizer imports. The Bank of Georgia has restricted luxury spending for Russian cardholders using Russian bank cards. Russia's Gazprom has cancelled its dividend payments. India's oil imports from Russia have surged. The Russian ruble is near its highest level against the US dollar since June 2023. Ukraine continues to engage in conflict with Russia, launching drone strikes targeting Moscow. These strikes have resulted in airport closures and air traffic disruptions. Russia claims to have downed hundreds of Ukrainian drones. The upcoming ASEAN summit will address the civil war in Myanmar, maritime disputes in the South China Sea, and U.S. tariff increases. Bitcoin has surpassed $111,000, fueled by institutional demand and support from Donald Trump's administration. China's economy is showing signs of strain, with home prices dropping 4.6% year-over-year in April 2024, leading to increased interest in cryptocurrency investments. Despite these domestic challenges, foreign financial firms remain optimistic, citing steady economic growth and supportive policies that now legally recognize private companies as growth engines. China's tech sector is advancing, with Xiaomi claiming its new phone chip rivals Apple's, but at a lower price. A Peking University report indicates that Apple, Huawei, and Xiaomi led China's top consumer brands based on online purchase behavior. XPeng's Hong Kong shares have surged nearly 80% this year due to its position in the EV market, despite profit challenges, while Cattle saw its shares jump over 11% upon debuting in Hong Kong. China is planning to regulate and support tech firms listing overseas. The country's trade relationships are intricate. Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang stated that U.S. semiconductor export controls on China have been ineffective, cutting Nvidia's China market share nearly in half, highlighting the delicate balance in U.S.-China trade relations. The Dutch government is facing pressure from China to ease chip export controls. A CNBC supply chain survey suggests a pause in tariffs is increasing imports from China, but this could lead to less retail choice and higher prices for consumers. China and ASEAN have concluded talks aimed at bolstering their free trade agreement amid the threat of a potential U.S. tariff war. China has strongly objected to the EU's proposed small parcel fees, which could disproportionately impact Chinese e-commerce giants like Shein and Temu. To prevent Europe's China policy from becoming a bargaining chip in its ties, China must offer concrete cooperation to the EU regarding trade complaints. Turning to the European Union, a former EU official has stated that the clash with China on electric vehicles is not an existential threat. The EU has proposed small parcel fees that would impact Chinese e-commerce companies. China must offer concrete cooperation to the EU regarding trade complaints, or risk Europe's China policy becoming a bargaining chip in its ties. In the United States, trade policies are under scrutiny. Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang has criticized U.S. semiconductor export controls on China, deeming them a failure that has nearly halved Nvidia's market share in China. A CNBC supply chain survey indicates that a pause in tariffs is increasing imports from China, but with expectations of less retail choice and higher prices. The U.S. is also facing the possibility of a trade war with China, prompting China and ASEAN to strengthen their free trade agreement. The U.S. AI chip rules put in place by Biden were changed by Trump, prompting warnings that controls over Chinese chips may strengthen their ecosystem. Meanwhile, South Korea has secured a pledge for price increases from China in exchange for tariff relief on steel. Finally, Taiwan is imposing anti-dumping duties of up to 18.52% on petroleum resin from China and Taiwan. India is navigating a complex economic landscape as it aims to attract investors. The rupee recently weakened to a one-month low due to outflows. Indian markets experienced a notable downturn, with the Sensex and Nifty 50 both dropping nearly 1%, causing investors to lose yacht 2 lakh crore. NSE Ashish Chauhan emphasizes that India's capital markets reflect its economic strength. He also noted that India is performing well amid global uncertainty. SEBI chief reports the rising influence of Gen Z and retail investors in the stock market. Despite the current market challenges, brokerages forecast an earnings revival for Indian firms in fiscal year 2026. Canadian pension fund CPP's India portfolio has grown to over $21.60 billion. Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri communicated India's firm stance against terrorism to Japan. Hindalco's domestic operations are showing strength, with focus now on Novelis. Saudi Arabia's main index closed lower at 11,188, reflecting a weak week, even as savings deposits hit a 16-year high amidst a rise in the Saudi money supply to $815 billion. The value of Saudi brands increased by 14% to $117, spearheaded by Aramco and SDCGI. The Kingdom's Public Investment Fund, PIF, is extending its global reach by opening an office in Paris, aiming to double its European investments, while steering clear of Swiss financial markets after the Credit Suisse turmoil. Franklin Templeton intends to launch Saudi-centric financial products, supported by a $5 billion agreement with the PF. Progressing with technological and economic diversification, Saudi Arabia launched an AI incubator to boost startup growth and digital economic development. The e-invoicing market is anticipated to hit USD $594.2 million by 2033. In digital security, MasterCard inaugurated a cyber resilience center to strengthen protection within Saudi Arabia. Elsewhere, Flynas is set to float a 30% stake in a Saudi IPO after achieving record profit. Additionally, Saudi Arabia has doubled its funding to the Union of Arab Chambers and introduced a global platform to influence the future of tourism. Despite these advances, the mega NEOM hydrogen project is facing potential demand challenges. European stock markets are facing turbulence driven by US budget deficit concerns and rising bond yields. The continent is also grappling with disappointing PMI data, indicating economic headwinds. Amidst this, Vodafone shares saw a 7% jump post-earnings report. Conversely, EasyJet's shares dipped almost 3% following news of a widened first-half loss. The airline industry braces for a challenging peak travel season due to a global jet shortage. Barclays CEO pointed out that U.S. trade tariffs present a real challenge for European countries, particularly concerning defense spending goals. United Kingdom saw a significant drop in net migration during 2024. This was largely due to fewer work and study visas being issued. Bank of England's Dingra highlighted Brexit-related challenges for the UK services industry. The UK is also committed to paying Mauritius £101 million each year for the use of its Indian Ocean base. The UK Prime Minister held discussions with President Zelensky, who then expressed his gratitude for Britain's latest sanctions against Russia. Shifting focus to the Ukraine-Russia conflict, former US President Trump declared the war in Ukraine is not my problem. Ukraine is currently pushing the EU for stronger sanctions against Russia, especially given perceived uncertainty in US commitment. The EU is encouraging Trump to impose sanctions on Moscow, particularly following his comments about potentially abandoning peace talks with Putin regarding Ukraine. President Zelensky reported that Russian forces suffered significant losses in Kursk. In a separate event, Ukrainian drone attacks temporarily shut down Moscow airport. Japan saw its farm minister, Taku Ito, resign following public outcry over his admission that he had never bought rice, adding to the country's economic anxieties. Corporate earnings in Japan are experiencing their first decline in 6 years, a consequence of tariffs and a strengthened yen. The nation has also revised its outlook on the global economy, acknowledging the adverse effects of US tariffs. A Reuters survey revealed that a significant majority of Japanese companies are urging the Bank of Japan to hold off on raising interest rates, citing concerns over the impact of President Trump's tariff. Trade negotiator Akazawa is set to engage in tariff discussions in the U.S., a move prompted by concerns arising from Japan's portfolio reshuffle. The Nikkei stock index experienced a dip, closing at a 2-week low in the wake of a sell-off of US stocks and bonds. Amidst a severe heat wave, Japan decided to waive basic water fees for residents of Tokyo. South Korea saw its financial markets buzzing, with individual investors upping their stakes in Chinese stocks, while domestic deposits swelled by 1 trillion won. The South Korean won climbed to a 7-month peak after whispers of currency discussions with the U.S., though the dollar dipped to 1,381.3, one amidst watchful eyes on Korea-U.S. exchange rate talks. MSCI tweaked its emerging markets index, decreasing South Korea's proportional representation. Turning to energy, South Korea unveiled a 1 trillion won market venture. The cryptocurrency landscape faced tighter regulations as South Korea reinforced its crypto rules, coinciding with institutional investors' planned market entries. In retail news, Flexform selected South Korea as the inaugural global venue for its Italian luxury furniture line. Global markets are showing volatility as Asian stocks fluctuate, influenced by U.S. debt concerns, rising bond yields, and inconsistent Wall Street performance. Asian shares initially fell, mirroring Wall Street's decline amid anxieties about U.S. debt and increasing bond yields. They briefly rebounded following China's interest rate cut designed to stimulate the economy. However, this momentum faded as Asian equities followed a sell-off in U.S. markets, driven by growing apprehension regarding the U.S. deficit. The increased vulnerability of U.S. markets is also giving foreign holders of U.S. Treasury bonds more leverage in trade negotiations with Washington. Hong Kong sees HSBC expanding its presence by enhancing its entrepreneurial wealth proposition. Australian markets faced headwinds as financial and consumer stocks declined, mirroring global sell-offs and anxieties surrounding US fiscal policy. The dip occurred alongside a concerning decrease in Australia's Purchasing Managers' Index, PMI. In corporate developments, Ma Financial finalized its acquisition of IP Generation for $90.40 million. Regulators at the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, XCC, signaled they will not block IAG's proposed acquisition of RAC Insurance. The United States is considering a Republican tax bill that risks escalating international tensions. This bill may provoke retaliatory tariffs from other nations. Such measures could trigger a broader economic conflict. Ecuador, Colombia, and Canada may be impacted by increased tariffs. These tariffs target the import of flowers, plants, and nursery products. Consumers may face higher prices as a result. Domestic flower farmers could see new opportunities. Germany experienced a contraction in business activity during May, primarily due to a slump in the services sector, according to PMI data. This downturn contributed to an unexpected decline in the German private sector. Overall, the law firm Cleary Gottlieb is closing its Frankfurt office after more than 30 years of operation. Germany also announced that the G7 finance chiefs have agreed to continue providing support to Ukraine. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa proposed a trade deal after facing criticism from U.S. President Donald Trump. This occurred during a tense meeting between the two leaders. The South African rand showed resilience, maintaining stability despite the diplomatic challenges. Internally, South Africa's finance minister emphasized that the nation's financial health hinges on the South African Revenue Service, SARS, achieving its tax collection goals. On the business front, Investec revealed its intention to repurchase shares worth $139. India's aviation sector is seeing robust growth, exemplified by Indigo's recent expansion. The airline increased its capacity by 21% in the first quarter, reflecting strong passenger demand. However, Indigo's financial results might be affected by airspace closures over Pakistan, which led to flight suspensions. Pakistan is witnessing developments in its financial sector with the launch of its first Sharia-compliant hotel, REIT. This initiative involves a collaboration between a Pakistani investment firm and a real estate developer, marking a step towards diversifying investment options within the country. Australia is celebrating Philippines Australia Friendship Day, generating social media engagement alongside increased blockchain collaboration, expected to boost crypto remittance volumes. Thailand's former Prime Minister, Yingluck Shinawatra, has been ordered by a Thai court to pay over $304 million for losses from a rice farming subsidy program implemented during her administration. The Trump administration's acceptance of a gift jet from Qatar has triggered bribery accusations and concerns about associated costs and timelines, while Qatar's wealth fund remains active in China, despite US reservations. Kenyans are concerned about the potential lapse of a U.S. duty-free trade agreement that could subject them to tariffs, impacting businesses like a major jeans manufacturer in Nairobi. Canada is preparing to host Donald Trump at the G7 Leaders Summit in June. Amid budgetary pressures, Canada is exploring using AI to achieve savings. The S&P TX Composite Index reflected a downturn in Canada's stock market, falling by 0.83%. Malaysia's AI project is attracting attention amid escalating tech competition between China and the US. Malaysia also aims to achieve a 60% female labor participation rate, addressing workforce retention challenges. Zambia is experiencing a record corn crop, which is anticipated to alleviate inflationary pressures. Shuka, a newly JSE-listed company, reports a supportive stance from the Zambian government towards mining operations. Brazil's poultry industry is facing a threat to its export capabilities due to a bird flu outbreak. The United Arab Emirates will host the Stargate UAE AI Campus, a collaboration between OpenAI, Oracle, Nvidia, and Cisco, slated for launch in 2026. Switzerland, in partnership with the UNDP, is investing in the economic development of 6 regions through smart economic specialization initiatives. The imposition of tariffs on flowers is expected to raise prices for consumers, while also creating an opportunity for local farmers to expand their market share. Kuwait's sovereign fund chief has voiced concerns regarding the current state of private equity investments. Singapore's deputy prime minister has stated that maintaining geopolitical neutrality is not a viable option given the current global circumstances. Aux Nations are considering measures to manage a separatist leader within Bosnia and Herzegovina. France and Saudi Arabia are collaborating on a new peace initiative aimed at disarming Hamas. Lithuania is urging the EU to implement more stringent sanctions against Russia. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.